a hard-hearted person, what are some things that you think of when I say, okay, imagine a hard-hearted person? What are some characteristics of this person? Cruel, good. Scrooge, yeah. Tight-fisted, yeah. Sorry? No, Donald Trump, no empathy, yeah. Anything else? The Grinch, very aloof, good, withdrawn, yeah. And I'm sure, sorry? Stubborn, yeah, that's a good word, stubborn. Stuck in the mud, unwilling to change, right? And I think that as I've said, think of a hard-hearted person, some of us may actually have had thought of someone. You probably have had an immediate image, oh, I know this person. This is a really hard-hearted person. And sometimes it could be someone we know well. It's probably someone we live with. It's someone in our own family. And sometimes it's somebody maybe like a character in a movie and we think, okay, this person is really epitomizes hard-heartedness. So some features of it is this, like, being cold, being stubborn, being full of pride, bitterness, lacking empathy, unrelenting, stuck in one ways, thoughtless, being close to correction, cruel, sarcastic sometimes. Interesting one, yeah. Being jaded with the world, jaded with faith, jaded with God, jaded with the church, unwilling to see other people's perspective, pessimistic. Now, towards the end, it kind of starts hitting home a little bit because while Scrooge is a little far away, but, being pessimistic and jaded sometimes feels a bit familiar, right? And we think, oh, I am a little bit pessimistic and jaded and hard to change sometimes. Jesus, as always, has a really good description of what hard-hearted is. He says, seeing they do not see and hearing they do not understand, right? And he encapsulates what hard-heartedness is in this statement, where he says that you are shown an alternative way, you are shown the right way, you are shown the correction, but you choose not to see it. You pretend like, I didn't see it, I don't want to see it, don't tell me to see it. And you also are hearing what God is saying, but you say, I don't understand. You're choosing not to do it. And so hard-heartedness in that sense is hearing God's correction, but choosing not to do it anyway. Now, towards the end, like we looked at sarcastic, jaded, pessimistic. Now you may think, okay, if I'm a little hard-hearted, what's the problem, right? It's my personality. I'm a little bit like that. I'm a tough nut. Yeah, I'm a little aloof, I'm a little withdrawn, it's hard to get to know me, right? And sometimes we wear that, like little badges of honor, that this is who I am, this is how I am, right? And so what's the problem? And so Jesus is amazing. He always puts things into perspective and says, what is the problem in that perspective? And so let's just read this parable where he says in Luke 8:4, we'll start reading from there. And a great crowd gathered, and people from town after town came to him. And he said in a parable, a sower went out to sow his seed, and as he sowed, some fell along the path and were trampled underfoot, and the birds of the air devoured them. And some fell on the rock, and they grew up, but it withered away, because it had no moisture. And some fell among the thorns, and the thorns grew up with it and choked it. And some fell on good soil, and grew and yielded 100-fold. And he said these things and called out, he who has ears, let him hear. So it's a call for the soft-hearted, right? And then his disciples asked him, what does this parable mean? And he said to them, to you has been given to know the secret of the kingdom of God. But for others, they hear in parables, so that seeing they do not see and hearing they do not understand. Now the parable is this. The seed is the word of God. So that's clear. We know what it is, okay? And along the path, those are those who have heard, and then the devil comes and takes away the word from their heart, so that they may not believe and be saved. And the ones on the rock are those who, when they hear the word, receive it with joy, but they have no root. They believe for a while, and in the time of testing, they fall away. But as for the ones that fell among the thorns, they are those who hear and then go their way, right? They are choked by the cares and the riches and the pleasures of life, and their fruit does not mature. And that, and as for in the good soil, this is why I need my glasses, right? See, I've reached that stage now. They are those who, hearing the word, hold fast to it in an honest and good heart, and bear fruit with patience, right? And this is the problem with hard-heartedness, right? We think it's like, it's just me being stuck in my ways, but what Jesus is saying is that hard-heartedness leads to no fruit. And in our Christian walk, we are called to bear fruit. What else are we there for? We are called for nothing else, right? And if we choose to remain hard-hearted, what Jesus is saying is, there is no fruit. You can't bear fruit. It's not like there may be a hypothetical situation where you may bear fruit. You cannot. It's not possible. And that is a scary realization when we think about this aspect of hard-heartedness. Like, we think about it as small. We've chosen to ignore it a long time. But what Jesus is saying is, there are severe repercussions in your spiritual life and your maturity and actually your fruit bearing. So, if we go through seasons where we're thinking, I'm not bearing fruit, I'm not seeing the fruit of the Spirit in my life, and this is a time for you to think about what is the condition of your heart. So this is one important aspect of why being hard-hearted is so significant in the kingdom. The other thing is that when we choose to be hard-hearted, we don't understand what God is doing. We don't understand his heart. We don't understand the significance of his work. And so if you read Mark 6, so this is after the 5 loaves and 2 fish, this amazing miracle had happened. And then after that, there is the calming of the sea, and all these amazing miracles had happened. And the people and his disciples were with Jesus the whole time. But what Jesus said, he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down, and they were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves, the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. Their hearts were hardened. You don't understand what God is doing. You're in the dark. You're confused. What is God doing? Am I even a part of his plan? What is he doing? Where is he leading me? And so the 2 important fallouts of having a hard heart is that one is we don't bear fruit, and the other thing is we just don't understand what God is doing. We're not a part of his plan. We're not seeking his heart. We are not at all close to what he's saying, speaking, or doing. It's out of our reach. So let's look at some classic examples in the Bible, right? Because there are people who have been hard-hearted and have learned the hard way, right? What happens when you're hard-hearted? And the classic example is Pharaoh. So God says that I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and every time he goes through seasons where the 10 plagues are relenting, his heart hardens. And so he goes back and says, I will not let these people go. And then God comes back with more signs and wonders, and then he again says, okay, I'll let them go. And then again, once it starts relenting, he's like, I'm not going to let them go. And he keeps doing this flip-flop, flip-flop. But in the end, what happens? He loses not just his own, he loses the fact that his power over his kingdom, he loses his child, and look at the suffering that ensues in the whole nation of Egypt. And you see that hard-heartedness is not just something that impacts you. Because if it was something that impacted me, sometimes we can say, it's only me. Let me be. But it impacts our family. It impacts our children. It impacts our spouses. It impacts our parents. It impacts the wider society that we live in. And our being stuck in the mud actually breaks things all around us. So let's stop here. Let's just take a moment to pause. Like Pharaoh, have you ever heard some clear direction in your life? Has God ever told you, this is the way, walk in it? And you are currently choosing to say, no, I'm not ready. I don't have all the answers. I'm not there yet. Give me more time. I don't think I can change. So let's just take a moment, right? A couple of minutes to just be silent in God's presence and ask God to just reveal. Is there something God has clearly told you to do and you're choosing not to do it? I would encourage you, as if there are things that are coming up for you, as there are areas in your life that God is revealing to you as we speak, just keep a note of it. Write it down, because we're going to have some time at the end of the service where we just pray very focusedly for these areas and ask God to change that. And it's not going to be general, it's not going to be just, prayer for us in general, but very specifically in terms of changing this heart of stone into a heart of flesh. So as these areas are coming up for you, just keep a note of them so that we are able to keep track as we go along. The other example of people who have been hard-hearted, of course, are the Israelites, right? They came out of Egypt with all these signs and wonders. They saw the parting of the Red Sea happen in front of their eyes. They were fed with manna. So many amazing things. God was literally there in physical form in a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire, and he was there with them all the time. Yet, you see, the people of Israel, they kept looking back. Oh, I wish we would have the leeks and the melons and the onions of Egypt, right? And they kept looking back when God was taking them forward. God was taking them into the promised land, to a point where God was so displeased with their constant looking back that God said, I can't allow these people to come into the promised land. They just cannot do it. And the scary thing about that is, we've all been called out. We've been called out of this world. We've been called to set our lives apart from God, for God, right? But so often we find ourselves looking back and saying, oh, I wish I could go back and be the person I was before, indulge in the things I was doing before. My life was so successful, it was so easy, right? But God is telling us, I'm calling you out. I'm calling you out of that and into the promised land. And so we are called to keep our eyes focused on where God is leading us, right? And so it's very easy for us to keep looking back with longing, keep looking back on our own habits with longing. And God is calling us this morning to look out and look into the promised land. This is what I'm calling you into. So this is the other area of hard-heartedness. Are there areas in your life that you feel like, I don't want to change? I can't change. Because this is how I've always been. This is how my family has been. This is how my culture has been. I can't change it now, right? This is too familiar. This old life is too familiar to me. I don't want to change these things, even though God is clearly telling you, change it, let it go, leave it behind, right? And these are really hard areas, right? Because I feel like so often we are a product of our families. We are a product of our upbringing. We are a product of things that have been reinforced time and time again by society. And it's very hard for us to leave those things behind and say, I'm not going to look for them anymore. I'm going to leave those behind. So this is a real significant call to look in your own hearts and say, are there areas in my life where I have just been holding on to things in my past because I feel like it's comfortable, I know it, it's easy, this is how I've always done it, don't ask me to change. So just look inside. Are there habits? Are there things you've always done? As we look at this, one of the things that, as I was preparing this sermon and I was just thinking about hard-heartedness, I was just thinking this is not how we were born. We were not born hard-hearted people. We were born actually very open, very willing to try new things, open to instruction. But somewhere along the way, we lost that. And it's not that we lost it willingly, we lost it because life is really hard. And I don't think that all of us have had very easy families, very easy experiences. We've all had some of us have had very difficult upbringings. We have had emotional neglect growing up. We've had a lot of criticism growing up. We've had a lot of maliciousness, maybe some abuse, maybe some pain, maybe some things that have happened to us over the years that have made us hard-hearted because we've learned that the world is not a safe place. I cannot afford to be open. I cannot afford to be vulnerable because when I'm open and vulnerable, I'm hurt. When I'm open and vulnerable, there is pain. People take advantage of me. People have used me. People have made my life so much harder. And over the years, I have learned that being cold, being aloof, being hard-hearted is the safest way to go about this world. And so we haven't reached here overnight. This is years in the making, right? And so while we are moving in this direction of identifying areas of hard-heartedness and moving to a place of being soft, we are very cognizant of the fact that we haven't reached here without pain. We have reached here as a result of a lot of bad experiences. And that's why I say that, this process is not going to be an easy process. It is going to be a process that you go through, which will keep coming up time and time again. Difficult people, difficult situations keep coming up, and your guard will keep going up. It's safer for me to retreat. It's safer for me to retreat. And so this is the start of this conversation. This is the start of this conversation you have with God, right? And so I'm just going to talk very briefly about these places where we have become hard-hearted, right? We become hard-hearted towards God. And over the years, we've become stubborn, we've become unrepentant, we've become stiff-necked. Maybe there is sin in our life that we have tried very hard to remove, and over the years, they've just not gone. And so now we've said it's okay. I don't even need, God knows. God knows that I struggle with this. So now we have made that a part of who we are. And God is calling us to say that, no, those are the areas that you are now relying on for whatever reason. And now God is calling you to a place of obedience, for willingly following His call and His voice out of whatever is holding you in bondage and out into freedom. And we have this word in Ezekiel 36:26, which God promises us, I will give you a new heart. I will put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you a heart of stone and give you that heart of flesh. So let's just think about areas where God has very clearly told us that give up these things, give up these things that you've learned to rely on to manage your emotions, to manage stress, maybe to manage, difficult things that are happening with our bodies. And we're like, okay, let me just rely on this. This is how I have relied on this all these years. But God is calling us to change those things. Second thing is we've become hard-hearted towards people. And I think that we are all at a stage where while we are in the process of changing things with God, people are a whole different issue, right? I can be open with God, but don't ask me to be open with people, right? Because people are hard to deal with. And they are, you don't know what you're going to get when you go into situations with openness and vulnerability. It's interesting that, in my work with couples and with people that who come with a lot of very severe issues, right? They always get to this point where they say, I'm willing to make things work, but don't ask me to be close to this person. I'm willing to have them in my house. I'm willing to work on my own preconceived notions about this person, but don't ask me to actually engage with them. Don't ask me to trust them again. Don't ask me to let them have any say in my life again, because they've hurt me so much, right? And usually, we are very good with people who are a little removed from us. So even in the church situation, we are very nice. Everybody knows us. We're like, oh, so nice, smiley, happy people, so open. But actually, everybody is one arm length away from you, right? And it's the same at work. It's the same with our neighbors. Everybody knows us as these really nice people, right? It's the people closest to us that hurt us the most. It's your parents. It's your spouses. It's your children. It's your siblings. It's your close friends. They are the ones who have hurt you, who have let you down, who have maybe not been there when you needed them the most. They've not shown up for you. And it's in those relationships where it's easy to become cold. It's easy to become withdrawn. It's easy to hold that bitterness and say, my goodness, I've learned my lesson, never again, right? I become unforgiving, and just self-protecting. Now we are in the self-protecting mode. Now this whole wall is built around me. You can't hurt me, right? But what is happening in that bargain is we are not actually engaging with these people. We are, the love of God as it flows in us, it starts with our immediate family and then goes out. We are expecting the love of God to come in me and then directly go out to some other person somewhere else, some poor person, some needy person, right? But don't ask me to get engaged with these people in my own home, right? Because they have hurt me the most. And this is, I feel like if there is anything that you take away from it, it's this hard-heartedness with people. This is an area that God is really calling each one of us to say, be more open, be more honest, be more willing to hear from them, be more willing to engage. And this is the hardest thing. It is the hardest thing. But this is the call. Yeah. Ephesians 4:31 and 32 say, let all bitterness, wrath, and anger, and clamor, and slander be put away from you, along with malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you. That is the call. And while we want to start with people who are so distant from us, the call is for us to start with our own home. Start with our spouses, start with our parents, start with our siblings, start with our close friends who've hurt us. Then the last one is, we're hard-hearted to ourselves, right? Now, as I talk about this, I'm aware that, we do have to judge ourselves and we don't get ourselves off the hook. That's not what I'm saying. But some of the things we say to ourselves, we would never say to anyone else. The kind of language we use to demean ourselves, to say, you're stupid, you're ugly, you deserve this, all bad things happen to you only, right? And we start with this intense negativity that just is so self-inflicted, right? With that intense self-critical voice. You deserved this. You only did this. You always make bad choices, right? And the things we say to ourselves, we would never open our mouth and utter to another human being. But we say it freely to ourselves. And the call is, can we move towards kindness to ourselves? Is that even possible? Can we even imagine that I can have a voice towards myself that is kind? And this is the verse, and this is the perspective, right? It's not about positive self-view. This is the perspective on ourselves. Ephesians 2:10. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good work, which God has prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. That is why the internal monologue changes. Not because I'm good or great, but because God has seen in me his workmanship. We have a godly perspective on ourselves. And so the hard-heartedness needs to change from our relationship with God, our relationship with each other, and our relationship with ourselves. Can we choose to change our perspective of being hard and closed off and move towards being more open, soft-hearted towards God, towards each other, and towards ourselves? One of the big signposts, if you ever were wondering, how would I know? Do I know if I have a soft heart, hard heart? Maybe nothing is stood out for you. I think the most important thing is unbelief. Is there unbelief in my heart? Because unbelief is the biggest indicator of a hard heart. When I don't believe what God is doing in my life, when I don't believe God's plans for me, I don't believe that my prayers will be answered. I don't believe that one issue that I have been tackling for years will ever be rid from my life. I don't believe it. I say I believe that God can heal me and change me, but I don't believe it. And unbelief is the biggest hallmark of a hard heart. And because we have these areas that are a little bit like these self-contained boxes where we have cut God out, we say, don't touch this place. It's problematic, I know, don't touch it. We have also cut this place out from other people because we are cut off from people. we end up these places where we experience spiritual bondage. These are the places where after which there is no growth. We reach that point of stagnation at this point. And I think a lot of us are at that place where God is saying, this is it. Now you have to get rid of this thing. You waited long enough, get rid of it now. Because too often we've thought, I'll grow also, and let this place also be like that only. Don't touch that. But like we saw in the parable, Jesus is saying that even if your soil is not ready, even the word when it goes in, it will not bear fruit, as much as you may want it to. So before we close, I just wanted to tell you this story, this really lovely story of St. Patrick. So St. Patrick was in Scotland, and he was captured by the Irish, and he was taken away to Ireland when he was very young, like a little boy. And over there he was a slave. He was kept on a hillside in Ireland somewhere looking after sheep. And he was so lonely, and he was so angry with the Irish people. He was so angry with his slave owners. He was so angry with everybody, and he was bitter. But at the age of 16, he was able to actually escape from Ireland and go back to Scotland. And in Scotland, Siri has woken up. Sorry. Yeah. So, and in Scotland, he again went back into community. He was no longer alone. He was in community, and God started speaking to him, and God started ministering to his life. And in that place where he experiences change, his growth, growing in community, God told him to go back to Ireland. And when he went back to Ireland, it said that he went all over Ireland, and wherever he went were centers of Christianity. This man, who had every reason to be bitter, angry, hard, I don't care about these people, let them go to hell, that's where they belong, God actually changed this person to fulfill a much bigger plan than he could ever imagine. So he's this amazing poet, and he put this down in this poem so beautifully. He said, like a stone in a wasteland, I was useless until he that is mighty came and in his mercy raised me up, and indeed lifted me high up and placed me on top of a wall. And from there I ought to shout in gratitude to the Lord for his great favor in this world and forever that the mind of man cannot measure. And I think this is the point where we say, when I work with a lot of non-Christian secular clients, we always get to this point where we say, you must let go of this thing that you've been holding in your heart, this bitterness, this unforgiveness, this hardness. And they will agree, but it's impossible. It is impossible to do it in your own strength. And there is also no good worldly reason to do it. The only reason to do it is because God has told you to. And the only way to do it is in his strength. There is no other way to do it. It is a fool's errand to try to do this on your own strength because it is impossible. The roots of this pain is very deep. And so you can't change it by just positive thinking and just some behavior modification. This needs deep spiritual work. And God is saying, I'm there. Rely on me. Do it in my strength. So let me call the band up, and let's just have a time of reflection and just look at these questions as we come to a close this morning. Reflect on our own hearts.